In our brief visit to Myanmar yesterday, we continued to push for all stakeholders to reach a deal on the delivery of COVID vaccines through the COVAX facility to help avert a fourth wave of COVID. We pushed for the International Committee for the Red Cross to be able to resume prison wellness visits. We pushed for expanding humanitarian access, including to displaced populations in places like Mindat in Chin State, and streamlining the travel authorization process for humanitarian agencies. And we pushed for engagement with the UN and ASEAN special envoys. In addition to securing Danny's release and that of a former Richardson Center staffer, IMO, 2 weeks ago, we believe our two visits in the last 2 weeks open space for progress on the humanitarian front, though much work remains to ensure basic needs are met. Thank you, and I turn it over to Ambassador Cameron Hume.
Just to formally introduce Ambassador Cameron Hume, former ambassador to South Africa, Algeria, Indonesia, and Sudan, chargé d'affaires there, and an advisor to the center, has worked with Governor Richardson for years over cases in Sudan and otherwise, and at the UN. Cameron.
Don't ask me why all those other efforts didn't turn out as well as this. I'd just like to say two things. One, I'm incredibly gratified to have been able to work with this team of people doing what they do. And the second thing is that while it's hard for many people to understand it, there are many things in the international field that only governments can do. And there are also things governments find it very hard to do. And I know from having worked with Governor Richardson and Mickey before in Sudan, where we were able to, I was a chargé, we were able to get out a two-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Paul Salopek. That would not have been possible if I had been left on my own to do it as a government representative. When the U.S. government sanctions everyone in the country and all members of the family of the people who actually hold power, sometimes it's difficult for the U.S. government to be listened to. And in those instances, an impassioned, articulate, and caring advocate like Bill Richardson can really make the difference. And I hope that that's a lesson that's learned, because as Mickey said, there are 50 other people waiting in dank prisons in what I think are nasty places, and they need advocates that are willing to put aside the normal policy declarations that we're monitoring the situation closely and we've sanctioned everybody in sight, to actually go in and, as Mickey suggested, do the hard work of having very difficult discussions for good purposes. So those are the 2 points I'd like to make. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to ask Joel Simon, who's the executive director of the Committee to Protect Journalists, to come and say a few words.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you, Governor Richardson, Ambassador Hume, Steve, Roger Carstens, Representative Levin. Thanks to all of you for the work you did to bring Danny home. And I just want to say, speaking personally, how wonderful it was to finally meet his family in person. I want to say a few things about the Fenster family. In the days after Danny was arrested, I had many meetings with his family, his brother Brian, who's here, his cousins Ethan and Amy. And let me share with you today what I told them at the time. This is a remarkable family: smart, strategic, resilient, loving, compassionate, determined, and relentless. I've been through this experience enough times to know that not every family responds the same way. Danny, despite his ordeal that he's been through, he's blessed and fortunate to come home to a family that loves him so deeply and waged such a smart and focused campaign to win his release. The second thing I want to say is this: as delighted and relieved as we are to have Danny home, dozens of journalists remain in prison in Myanmar, among the thousands of political prisoners. I want to take a moment to call for the release of all journalists wrongfully imprisoned in Myanmar. Not long ago, despite the enormous challenges, Myanmar was a hopeful place for media freedom, and there was a thriving and diverse media scene of which Danny was a part. Today, Myanmar is among the worst jailers of journalists in the world. Next month, CPJ will release our annual census of every single journalist imprisoned around the world. One journalist, Danny Fenster, will not be on that list. We take this opportunity to call on the government of Myanmar to adopt a similar posture towards those who remain in prison unjustly. Release them now. Thank you.
All right, I would like to invite Congressman Andy Levin to come and say a few words.
Thank you. So this is just an awesome day. I can't even believe it, Danny. My name's Andy Levin. I represent Michigan's 9th District, including Huntington Woods, where the Fenster family's from. I'm also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Asia Subcommittee. I'm the author of, I think it's HRES 134, but anyway, our resolution condemning the coup after the coup, and speaking about the fate of journalists and calling for actually a broader democracy in Myanmar than existed before the coup. But just the idea that my constituent would be plucked like this and thrown in prison with absolutely no real credible charges and kept there for 5.5 months, it was just it was not the kind of Bashir that I was looking for as somebody involved in policy about Burma. But today I have only words of gratitude. I will start with Governor Richardson. I'm so grateful to you for bringing Danny to us like literally right now, and you've done this over and over, and I'm super, super appreciative. I want to tell people that our government has been fantastic from day one. Tony Blinken and his staff in the State Department, our embassy in Rangoon, Ambassador Vida and his whole staff have unfailingly worked to get Danny out. I don't know what to say about Roger Carstens, appointed by President Trump, kept on by President Biden. Whatever future people are the SPIHA, the Special Presidential Envoy for Hostage Affairs, this is my model of what that job is. And he has just been an incredible partner from literally the first time he called me on my cell phone within hours of this happening. But I want to lift up just like what an incredibly broad effort this was. Other governments, this case proves that going it alone as America never worked. It will never work. We need multilateralism. We need private diplomacy. But just in terms of my personal experience, I want to thank the governments of Japan, Singapore, Thailand, China, Israel, Qatar, Sri Lanka, India, and the ASEAN countries as a group and as a staff for helping advocate for Danny and doing things that most of which will never be known to get him out of there. And especially the American people, the people starting with Huntington Woods. Danny, I don't know what y'all are going to do. They want to have like a ticker tape parade. They are just so excited about you finally being free. And they have just thrown their heart and soul into this. The community of journalists in Metro Detroit and around the country, the Jewish community, so many people. And the Fenster family as organizers, Buddy and Rose and Brian and the cousins and all the people that I met, the campaign that you all organized was just it was remarkable, and it was organic, and it was the kind of thing that our government couldn't ignore and governments around the world couldn't ignore, because it was real, it was vibrant, and it contributed mightily to getting Danny home. And all those months when you were sitting in that damn prison, having no way of knowing, I wondered what you could possibly think. Like, why isn't my family getting me out of here? And I'm telling you, brother, what they did just blew me away, day after day, week after week, month after month. So this is just a beautiful day. I'm just so grateful to Governor Richardson and everybody who had a hand in this. And we do, and I so appreciate the idea of keeping our eyes on the prize about bringing others home. Let me mention one set of Americans that we can't name. Actually, we can't lift up their names because their names are being withheld for their safety. But as many of you know, there's 16 Americans and 1 Canadian that were kidnapped in Haiti and are being held for ransom, including a mom and 4 kids from Michigan. And we are going to get them out of there, but we have to continue to do this work. Thanks.
All right. Roger Carstens, Special Presidential Envoy on Hostage Affairs.
You know, I think it'd almost be repeating all the comments that have been made up here earlier, but I'd like to start with saying thank you to Governor Richardson for securing the release of Danny Fenster. This stuff's hard. It takes a community of people to get it done, whether it's the U.S. government working with NGOs, working with members of Congress, working with members of the media. There's a whole community out there. We call it the hostage enterprise. I'm not sure if that's a real term or not, but there's a whole ecosystem of people that pull together in cases like this to try to support the families, communicate to these wonderful families, and to try to do things like effecting Danny's release. And at times it takes, I think as the governor and Mickey pointed out, sometimes it takes an unconventional approach, and it can't be the government. So to the governor, I want to say a huge thanks for getting this win. Danny, to you, I want to say it's so good to finally see you after this time. To the family, we had a chance to come out and spend time with all of you, Buddy, Rose, Amy, Ethan, Andrea, Brian, of course. You ran the most incredible campaign, and when this is all said and done, I'm going to come out to your house and we're going to do an after-action review, because the things that you did to elevate Danny's case, that's the kind of thing that other families need to learn from, and we want to make sure we propagate those lessons learned. To Congressman Levin, we talked like pretty much on the first day. I think we called each other like 10:30 at night, and you've been really the example of how people on Capitol Hill can really lend weight to getting things like this done. To Mickey Bergman, we've been plotting and scheming not only on this case, but probably about 5 or 6 others. And I'm just grateful to be a member of the U.S. government, but to have the relationship that I have with people like Mickey Bergman, Governor Richardson, and other NGOs out there in this community of trying to bring people home. To the whole Richardson Center, Joel, read his book. It's amazing. Read the governor's book too. It tells you how to get this stuff done. This is about the hardest thing that we can do, is bringing people back in tough cases like this. And the way that we get it done is through these partnerships. But again, Governor, this is your day. So grateful. And Danny, this is your day. Grateful to have you home. Thank you.
All right, and now I will ask Danny to come in and speak himself. Just so you know, in all of the, was it 24 hours, I guess, since we got you, I don't know, it's confusing. I think you slept only 2 hours on the plane. But I can assure you, he looks better now after the shower he took than he did when we picked him up. But Danny.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to everybody that's sitting up here. I mean, I can only just sort of reiterate what everybody said. These, different organizations, I think you all share the same interests, but work within different constraints. And, so everything that everybody was able to do within their mandates, this time it worked. And I'm incredibly grateful to have seen Bill and his team there. Out on the tarmac waiting for me. It's just the greatest feeling I can ever remember having. To my family, I was able to get little hints of what was going on occasionally throughout the experience, if I was outside of the prison in court, maybe some police aide that could speak a little bit of English would flash a picture on his phone of my entire family wearing T-shirts with my face on it on CNN, which was a pretty bizarre thing to see, sitting in a courtroom there. So I was aware, and I know my brother. I know what he's capable of and how he works. So I assumed, I did not know the extent of it, but I assumed something was going on out there. And that gratitude, I mean, I spent the last 15 hours on the flight just looking at the coverage across the country in these places that I've lived, and seeing people sort of remembering me and pulling together, and it's incredible. I just have so much gratitude right now for everything everyone's done. I think every action everyone's taken has helped a little bit. So I'm going to take time to celebrate and to spend time with my family, and then, you know, continue concentrating on all the other, not just journalists and prisoners of conscience in Myanmar and everywhere else. For me, in Myanmar, just a lot of citizens, doctors, teachers that are in prison right now. And, you know, that's another point that everybody here is reiterating. This will be a short little celebration, but, you know, let's keep focused on what the actual story is here.
Hey, Danny, can you describe
Wait. So we're going to have questions after, okay?
And just thanks again to Bill. I mean, I don't have words. I don't have words for it right now.
Thank you, Dan. All right, we'll open up for questions immediately after the governor speaks. I want to invite him, not only my boss. I've been working with him informally, I think, for 15 years, formally for about 10 now. As I mentioned before, the guy who just always shows up and willing to take a beating in order to meet in person and meet with some people that others do not. The governor worked on this for quite a while, including 4 different meetings with the commander-in-chief in Myanmar, 2 of them formal, 2 of them in person, face-to-face, one-on-one. Governor.
Is it okay if I take my mask off? Well, this is Danny's day, Danny Fenster's day, and the Fenster family. But before I say anything, I see the Fenster family back there. Any of you want to say anything? Ryan? Come on. You ran a, no? Okay. But I'm acknowledging your efforts, and your mom and dad. I saw you with the CNN reports, and I saw you with your T-shirts. And I think, as Roger Carson's mentioned, this is what happened here, and Congressman, is a team effort. You had advocacy of the families. You had other NGOs. You had the Committee to Protect Journalists. You had the administration, the State Department, in the form of Roger Carson's, who's, by the way, has been a bipartisan leader on this issue in the past administration and this administration. And you had our team here. I mean, what Ambassador Hume, Steve Ross was the intellectual author of the effort to help the people of Myanmar with vaccines, with humanitarian aid. That's when we went for the first time 2 weeks ago. All of this happened, Danny's release, within 2 weeks. And you're probably going to ask, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened because of this collaborative effort. But it also happened because of these, what was decisive was a meeting, 4 meetings that Mickey mentioned with the Commander-in-Chief. And I said to him, this would be a gift, a humanitarian gesture to the American people. And this was the right thing to do. This was a journalist doing his job. This was a journalist reporting on what was happening, and he shouldn't suffer. And I was also enormously gratified to get my staff member, Aimo, a Burmese woman, 31 years old, empowering women. She was training women throughout Myanmar on how to be active. And she was imprisoned because she demonstrated. So I think, as Danny said, we got a long way to go all over the world. And as Joel Simon said, some of the more vulnerable people that are arrested are journalists because they're reporting the truth. This is worldwide. This is not just Myanmar. And this is not right. So what was the best moment? And that was at the airport in Myanmar, seeing Danny walk towards me with all these security people around him. And I said to him, Danny, I'm taking you home. I'm taking you back to the United States today. He said, great. That was worth the effort. And then coming into the hotel here, and I thank the TWA Hotel, and seeing the family embrace Danny. I'm going to conclude with this. One, I believe that we have to engage our adversaries, no matter how different our philosophies are. And number two, the way you deal with issues that divide nations is through humanitarian efforts before political differences. I think that is fundamental. And you know, they kept referring to beatings I took. I don't know what beatings I've taken because we succeed pretty much on all of them. But I took a little heat because they said, well, you met with this leader and you legitimize him by meeting with him. Even though I'm not a member of the government, even though, we don't take orders from the government. We're a foundation that works on conflict resolution, on refugees. We work on North Korea issues. We work on protecting wildlife, mainly in Africa. So we do a lot of things. But I just wanted to say that what is important here, a big part of our effort with hostages around the world, is this personal fringe diplomacy. And I want to acknowledge Mickey Bergman. He gets up here and he's the MC, but he's really the heart and soul of this operation. And I'm going to acknowledge him because all of this planning we did, the 4 meetings we had, we were in Myanmar for 8 hours to get Danny, 8 hours, in and out. And it took a last meeting with the leader, the military leader, to get a decree where Danny was given an amnesty. And we brought him home. And he is home. So, you had the first question. Go ahead. You wanted to Danny, right?
Well, actually, I want to ask you.
Okay.
So, weren't you acting in an official capacity? Were you acting as an emissary for the U.S.?
No. I just said that. No, I don't work for the U.S. government. I was not an emissary.
Yeah, but did you at all, what kind of participation did the U.S. government have in your discussions with the government in Myanmar?
Well,
Were you purely a private citizen trying to get Danny out?
Yeah, but we met with the American ambassador there. We've had many meetings with Roger Carstens. We met with ambassadors from the European Union, ASEAN, in Myanmar, with UN officials. And so we fulfill 3 objectives. What is the success of this mission? 1, securing Danny's release. 2, securing Aimaw's release, Burmese woman. 3, as Steve mentioned, progress on bringing vaccines to the people of Myanmar through UN agencies, through NGOs, through meetings with the government, facilitating humanitarian assistance to the people of Myanmar. Food, enormous food shortages, enormous vaccine shortages, no COVAX there yet. So our trip advanced things on the humanitarian front mildly but path forward, moving to help the people of Myanmar, 55 million people, a country that I've spent a lot of time with, like Congressman Levin, who's been a leader on this effort. Okay, some more questions. Yeah.
Do you think that the humanitarian efforts helped with the release? Can you talk a little bit about why you think they changed their mind?
I believe it did help. I think the fact that we went, and by the way, we were invited to go. There's a letter from the foreign minister inviting me to go, I think because of my long history with Myanmar. And I was on the other side with Aung San Suu Kyi until she and I had a difference on the Rohingya issue. Yes, it helped that I think we went there, our team, especially Steve Ross, who is an expert in this area, and said, there's problems with the delivery of humanitarian assistance and vaccines, government of Myanmar. How can we fix that? And I think those discussions led to a little bit of understanding on the case of Danny, which is the objective that the American people wanted the most from Myanmar.
You said you met with the officials in Myanmar 4 times. What do you think was the breaking point in their decision making?
On Danny?
On Danny's case, yes.
Well, I think that there was a certain amount of understanding, trust developed between myself and my team and the commander-in-chief. We had 4 meetings, 2 formal with our staffs, and then I had a one-on-one twice with him, with a translator who, you know, was anyway, I won't say anything more. But I think that kind of made it happen. That was decisive. But the embassy in Myanmar was very active. Other governments were active. And then the efforts here and the Committee to Protect Journalists and our whole team effort. And I think Danny's case, a journalist, an accomplished journalist doing his job, a great American family from Detroit, made it happen. Any other questions?
I guess just what else you're seeing on the ground in Myanmar.
What's that?
Are you worried about the people that haven't been released? Are you concerned for them?
Well, yeah. I mean, I am worried. This country means a lot to me. It always has. I've been there, I don't know, close to 10 times. Yeah. And I said that to the government. I said, you know, there's problems with vaccines, with humanitarian access, with refugees, with sickness. What'll make things happen is you meeting with UN agencies, with the Red Cross agency. I think we advance another issue, having more prison visits at the Insane Prison, INSEIN. It's kind of an appropriate name. More access to the conditions in those prisons by the Red Cross. The World Food Program, we were able, I think, to push forward a project in a very remote rural area of Myanmar that got food to people that were not getting food.
Governor?
Yeah.
Was the offer of the COVID vaccine decisive in getting Danny's release?
Well, you know, I couldn't offer it. I mean, I think this gentleman, very good question. I don't have anything to offer. And you know what the people of the government or government officials asked me for in exchange for Danny? Nothing. They didn't ask me for anything. I couldn't deliver anything anyway. But here he is.
Governor, when did you inform the State Department or any other U.S. official as to the work you were doing to try and get Danny released?
Oh, we had constant communication, constant communication. Is that it? Guys?
Was Danny allowed to go back to his apartment when he was released? Oh, not.
Was I allowed to return to my apartment before boarding a flight?
Exactly.
No, no, not at all. That entire day I didn't know that I was going home. I was in a prison in Yangon, and that morning I was told to pack a bag with what I needed, shuffled into a car, shackled hands and legs, and told not to ask questions or say anything. We drove straight past the airport in Yangon, so I had no idea where we were going, and we drove to Naypyidaw. So I spent the entire day in Naypyidaw waiting for something. I didn't understand what I was waiting for, but I was just sitting in a chair, staring at an empty chair across from me. And several hours later, a police officer sat down and said, "You've been charged with these crimes and found guilty. We're gonna offer you this pardon, and you're gonna leave right now." And I was in Naypyidaw. I wasn't in Yangon. My wife was in Yangon, in the apartment that we shared. I didn't get to see her or talk to her. She was getting ready to bring a parcel of food to the prison for me the following day, which I was basically depending on. She would come every 2 weeks is what they would allow. I don't know if she had any idea what was happening. I'm sure she had access to more information than I did. But yeah, so no, I wasn't able to return to the apartment. Took a few belongings with me. They told me the dress code was going to be casual. So.
Danny, can you describe your day-to-day ordeal? How were you treated? What you went through?
Most days, you wake up really early, you drink some instant coffee that you've made the night before, and then you read for as many hours as you can focus on the book that you have. And then you go outside and you walk in a circle for a little while, and I would jog. It's a very small little circle to jog around, and there were some sort of makeshift weights. I would lift weights a little bit, and then eat, and then try to read some more, and then stare at the wall, think, wait until it got dark and I could lay down and go to bed. There were friends, there were people I talked to a little bit, but it's pretty limited.
Were you mistreated or threatened in any way by the prison authorities?
No, I wouldn't say that. I got myself into trouble there trying to push boundaries, and that caused small confrontations that, I didn't know what would come of them, so I was a little worried, but nothing. I wasn't physically threatened or anything.
Push boundaries? What do you mean?
I wanted to sleep with the lights off. They wanted the lights on, so we would have a little tug of war about that. I should have just left the light on. Things like that, small things, stupid things. I came in there at first with an attitude that I'm not going to be here very long, and I'm going to stand my ground. And it didn't take too long to figure out that I didn't have a whole lot of ground to stand on.
Any thought how long you were going to be there?
Sorry?
Did you at all think that, you said you thought you were just not going to be there for very long, but at some point did you think that, my gosh, I might be here forever?
There were other examples of people who had been released, and so I kind of plotted out trajectories based on that, and then it kept moving beyond anybody that I had seen that was in a similar situation. So each thing that I had imagined, watching it pass by, you get a little bit more worried. I didn't think forever, but if I were told that I had to stay for, say, 3 years, it'd be hard to mentally deal with planning for 3 years.
You said
Was there
there was,
ever a time
you had
that
an
you
income.
lost?
Let's have somebody.
Was there ever a time that you lost hope that you?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Every day, I thought, I got into a good mood, and I thought I had sort of, had this change in perspective, but then, you get a little setback, and then you realize, well, you don't change your perspective and you're finished. You have to do that every day. So every day it's sort of up and down, and then you have some dark moments, and then you have some days that are just pretty much completely fine.
There are several dozen journalists, local journalists, that are still languishing in Myanmar jail. What is your message to them, first of all, and what can international community, as well as the United States government and various funds and organizations do to secure their release?
You know, I don't know. I don't think I could really advise the government on what. I mean, they have certain constraints. They have certain objectives that limit, you know, how the ways they can engage, which is completely, I think, understandable. And there's as we were talking about, an ecosystem. So there are other groups that can do things that the government is less able to do. I think I can only really kind of consider my own role. I think continuing to write and publish and push these things out. What Frontier does, and what a lot of the Westerners that go there to edit work, they go to help locals tell their story for an international audience. And we believe that that is really important, and we believe that that brings these outside powers to bear on the country. We don't know, you know, what is the best policy. We think shedding light on it is always helpful. The main objective is to make the situation better, and so we have all these different players filling different roles. And you know, these guys are pretty experienced. They all know exactly what their roles are and what they're doing.
All right, I think sorry. One last question, and then I think the family has been waiting here so patiently. We need to let them spend some time.
Danny, how do you see the future? What's next for you, maybe, now that you're back?
I haven't been able to communicate with Frontier. Frontier Myanmar, an incredible institution. I might still be employed there. I have heard it's been intimated to me that they've stopped publishing online but are still operating. I need to get to a store and buy a SIM card and get in touch with some people.
All right, all right.
He had gotten cut off when he was speaking up there. He didn't get to finish his thought about, you know, the people that are still in there. Do you want to finish that thought about?
Well, yeah. Like as I was saying, what my role is, and CPJ's role in these sorts of groups is to keep the spotlight focused on that, and that's what we're going to continue to do. I think journalists in Myanmar have a good that are imprisoned have a good chance to be freed. There's been a lot of these amnesties that keep on coming up around holidays and things. There are other targets I think the government has that they're more focused on.
Danny, one final question about your wife. Danny, your wife?
Please, let's. As I can tell you, they had an opportunity to talk when we landed in Doha for the little layover.
Yeah, I've
over
spoken
video,
to her.
and he spoke to her. Okay, thank you, Governor.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
Danny.
you very much.
Let's get you back to the.
Yeah.